Mahama built UGMC. What is he building now for somebody to also go and rest there?
Agenda 111?
Where is it? Another PR, sloganeering. You don't present anything in the budget showing that this is a source of funding for Agenda 111. You don't. So you go and do 2 bags of cement a day, keeping about 10 people on the side, deceiving the people that we are on site. Who are you deceiving? You are deceiving yourself. Bella, you go to Rich Hospital. There's no a single imaging equipment working there. Go after here, go check.
The newly refurbished one?
Yes, because you know, health equipment are such that you must be replacing them intermittently and be maintaining them. So if over 2 years, 3 years, you don't maintain them and you siphon the money away, why are you going to get the money to maintain them? Go to Kolebu. If you go there, you will weep. Even if it is raining, the roofs will be leaking.
But where are we going to get the money? And Dr. Dusakode, I'll come to you shortly, but where are we going to get the money to fix all these problems? Because clearly,
because we are not prioritizing well. What is important?
Austerity.
No, what is important for us is cathedral. That is what is important for us, not the health sector.
But that has been halted now, has it not?
How much have we sunk there, that hole? How many hospitals can that money build? Directly opposite the Bank of Ghana, the new Bank of Ghana, is the Rich Hospital, the phase 2. You know the same amount of money is what is being used to build the headquarters. Because the health facility is not our priority. It's the headquarters of Bank of Ghana that is our priority. It is about setting your priorities right. Bella, before I go, let me tell you 2 or 3 issues that I'm expecting from this budget.
Okay.
His Excellency John Dramani Mahama has given some wise counseling. And at this point, I think that this budget must give it some meaning.
Okay.
Number 1, it is no fault of any woman in this world to menstruate. Okay? So we should not be paying taxes because you are menstruating. And so His Excellency John Dramani Mahama has been saying it over and over again that let's scrap the taxes on sanitary pads. That's number 1.
Okay.
Number 2, if you recall, the issue of dialysis became very topical.
Yes.
And in the build-up, we have taxes. And then His Excellency John Dramani Mahama is saying that let's scrap all the taxes on the reagents for dialysis, whether private or government. I'm also expecting that we would decap the National Health Insurance Fund.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
As we speak now, the subscribers of National Health Insurance card or scheme, they go to the health facilities and they are made to pay money.
Yeah.
They are made to pay money, co-payment. Okay? And so they must begin to pay realistic tariffs to the health facilities in order to serve the people well.
Okay.
And the budget must give us clear indications how we are going to complete the numerous health facilities ongoing.
All right.
Some were inherited about 6-7 years ago. But you know it has taken the 2 for or say to mobilize money for the refurbishment or renovation of Kompanochi. It's an indictment on the political class in this country.
All right. Well, we're looking forward to all the expectations. You did mention you wanted to leave. Oh, I hope you're not going yet.
Well, I can give you some few
Give us
minutes.
some time. But let me bring Dr. Dusakode in. And you've heard from him. Of course, you are an economist. And I heard you yesterday talk about the fact that, you know, if there should even be the introduction of taxes, because we know that we need to build upon our revenue and make some more money to balance our economy. If there should be the introduction of taxes, government should focus on the industries that are doing well, that are making profits, and tax them instead of taxing the rest of Ghanaians, because then that burdens us even more. If you listen to the expectations that he has, is that going to work with, you know, this idea that you have given government?
It should work. They have no option.
Okay.
Because the government has not been able to go to the Eurobond market since January 2022. They are borrowing domestically at a higher cost. Government is talking about tightening the fiscal policy. Bank of Ghana is talking about tightening the monetary policy.
Yeah.
There is zero financing from the central bank. In other words, if you incur any budget deficit, you're not going to get any help from the Bank of Ghana. So everything comes down to domestic resource mobilization. It's something we should have done. We didn't do when we completed a HIPIC initiative in 2006.
Yeah.
You track the graph, you see that the growth of borrowing, public debt, has been up there around 9,000%, as against about 3,000% in domestic revenue. So we are just interested in borrowing as a country. We are not so much interested in mobilizing domestic resources domestically. Now we've gotten to the point where there's no help coming from outside. Even with the IMF program, they are giving you the money in tranches. So you have to get the revenue domestically. And I have a list here. Let me lay the background for taxation.
Okay.
It is not the case that taxation is always for the purpose of revenue mobilization. Sometimes you use taxes to discourage consumption, use taxes as an incentive to encourage production. So there's something called Laffer curve in economics. You always must track your Laffer curve. If by increasing the tax rate, your tax revenue is declining, then you should stop at the point of the peak.
Yeah.
Right. In level 100 economics, the tax multiplier effect on GDP is negative. I repeat, the tax multiplier effect on GDP is always negative. In other words, the more taxes, the lower the GDP. Then there's a caveat. So then why do we tax? Why do governments raise revenues through taxes? The idea is that the government expenditure multiplier is positive on GDP.
Okay.
So you raise revenue, if you want to raise through taxes, you can do that with some prudence. And then with the hope that government will spend efficiently so that the positive government expenditure multiplier will outweigh the negative tax multiplier effect on GDP, so that in the end you have a positive tax multiplier. So if you raise negative tax multiplier and you don't spend it prudently on the economy, you will end up with negative, and the economy will shrink. And that is what we've seen at some point in our history. So we should be very careful when we are talking about taxation. Now, domestic resource mobilization. I made a point on your station last, and I'm repeating it. If you are a finance minister and economist, and you want to raise revenue through taxation, you don't wake up and just introduce any tax. You assess the economy. The economy has different sectors. Broadly, there are three main sectors: agri, industry, and services. But within that, these three broad sectors, there are sub-sectors. So you look at the sectors and look at the sub-sectors that are doing well. And these are the areas that you can tax and get money. Because if it's growing, then you can tax to get some money. According to some economists in the public finance, the tax revenue must always, on the average, must grow by 2.5 times the GDP growth rate.
Okay.
That is the ideal for every economy. I repeat, the tax revenue growth rate must be estimated at 2.5 times the GDP growth rate. The moment you see any disparity, it means that you must have a look at your tax revenue again. So always go within the subsectors, the sectors that are doing well, and you tax and you can get some money. Those that are struggling, you have to have some mercy on them. Give them some tax rebates.
Okay.
They can, but maybe by relieving them of the tax burden, they can grow, and then in future, you can come back and tax them. So what are the sectors? Number one on my list, in the midst of all the challenges, the IMF document is projecting the extractive sector to grow at 12%. In the midst of all our challenges, the GDP was projected to grow at 2.8 and revised downwards to 1.5. But the extractive sector, the natural resources altogether in Ghana, is expected to grow at 12% in Ghana. So if you're looking for an area to tax, a sector is growing at 12%. That's where you look at. Let's look at the percentage, forget about the percentage, look at the figures. Last year, now today, Ghana is the #1 producer of gold in Africa. The whole of Africa, out of 54 countries, we have surpassed South Africa. According to the Bank of Ghana data, we produced 3.8 million ounces of gold, estimated at $6.4 billion. Crude oil, we produced $5.6 billion. Put the two together, 12 billion. Assuming next year, we're going to have the same figure. Lithium is estimated at $6.6 billion. Put the first three together, we are talking about close to $20 billion, not cedis. Now the exchange rate is 12. So our listeners and viewers can do the math. Close to $20 billion in 1 year. Only three natural resources: gold, crude oil, lithium. On the average, we get less than 30%. So even if you get 40% of 20 billion, half, our peers from Botswana are doing 55% participation in carrying interest. Our neighbors from Nigeria are doing 51% carrying and participating interest. On the average, Ghana is doing 16%. And that is an indictment on all of us. The contrast must be looked at. Somebody will just raise the issue of investment. That is why we encourage the government to invest. Have a special purpose vehicle and invest so that you can reap. The economic rent in the extractive sector, the economic rent, that is the economist's way of calculating profit because we take into consideration the cost of capital. The economic rent from the extractive sector, call it the economic profit, is amounting to $5 billion every year, the profit alone.
Hold on for me. Let me just announce that we're also live on 3FM 92.7. And so if you have to leave home at this point, you can listen to us. We're having a very important conversation here, and you cannot miss out on it. So 3FM 92.7. We're also streaming live on Facebook at TV3 Ghana. Continue, Doc.
So an industry is earning on the average, $5 billion as rent, economic rent, profits. So you have taken care of all the costs, including opportunity cost of capital. So if Ghana had invested in the production of the natural resource, we'll be earning maybe half of it, as Botswana is doing. How much do we gain from the profit? Only 10.4%. So we have a profit of 5 billion, and Ghana is earning 500 million out of it. So the extractive sector, we must, as a country, Honorable is here, is in the minority side, we must have that consensus, media, academia, honorables. Let's have a consensus that we are investing heavily in the natural resource. If you ask me as an economist, where we are going to get the money to transform our economy into a first-class economy, I don't see any other place except the extractive sector. And we have examples from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Norway, even the United States, China, Russia. Come to Africa, you can talk of Gabon, Equatorial Guinea, Botswana, our own neighbors, Nigeria. They are getting a lot from the crude oil. So the extractive sector is a long-term vision. But short-term, between today and tomorrow, we can increase the royalties. The royalties are around 5%. And it's earning us, last year, it earned us 4.3 billion cedis. If you double it from 5 to 10, you're talking about 8 billion, right? So we are looking at areas to get money. Then the telcos, the telcos are doing well. You can either remove the e-levy and tax their profits. You can do that. How much is the e-levy giving us? 500 million last year. It's expected to double this year. That's 1 billion cedis. I have my own reservations about the e-levy. I have written even an article, so I'm not hiding it. My position on the e-levy is that it is not in sync with the objective. The objective was to tax the incomes of the people in the informal sector. It is not serving that purpose. So let's redesign the e-levy to tax the incomes of the plumber, the mason, the carpenter, all those in the informal sector, so we can get it. And according to SSB and Co., the incomes, the revenue from the income tax of the informal sector is estimated at 1% of GDP. If next year's or this year's GDP is around 800 billion, so if we are serious as a country, we should be talking about some 8 billion cedis from the tax of the incomes of the informal sector. Next year, the GDP is estimated at 950 billion cedis. So 1% of it is 9.8 billion. Then you come to the property rates. Again, by the same paper, the property rates, the expected income or revenue from the property rate is averagely 2% of GDP. So if your GDP is 950 billion, 2% is 18 billion. So you have 18 billion, 9 billion, and 13 billion from tax exemptions because it's 1.5% of GDP. The tax exemptions that we give away, we can stop or revise it and get some relief. So you have 18 plus 9 plus 13 plus 8 royalties if you double the royalties. Bella, today and tomorrow, the finance minister can raise or be projecting 48 billion cedis. That's
a lot of money.
Yes. We are not serious.
To the extent that we need to even go to IMF, for example.
Of course. This 48 billion cedis divided by the exchange rate of 12. Even if it's 10, it's about 4.8 billion. So it should be almost the same as the amount we are getting from the IMF. There's money here. There's money in Ghana. We are just not serious. We have signed contracts in the extractive sector. We are giving it away. I thought we would learn a lesson. Look at the lithium contract. Almost similar to what we saw in oil and gold and magnesium and bauxite and what have you. So the extractive sector, the telcos, I would have mentioned the banking sector, but for the DDEP, they have suffered a lot.
I'm not sure they would even agree to that.
They will kill me before I leave here.
Okay.
So the telcos, the extractive sector, and then you come to the incomes to the informal sector, property rates, tax exemptions. We're talking about some 50 billion cedis. This is doable. This is something we should do. And there's no money coming from anywhere. We should be serious and sit down with the minority, majority, media, academia, everybody. We have the time to do research. They should involve us in their research. If they want us to do it, we'll do it for them. And plot the graphs, do all the analysis, or do all the modeling. One thing I've seen in the government that have come and gone, including the present one, is that we do not take research serious. We don't do modeling. We don't do simulations. We just wake up and introduce a tax. We just wake up and bring something without doing the modeling to see if this one goes up, we'll get this. If this one goes down, we'll get this.
Which is what I wanted to ask, and I'll come to Honorable Minta kind of shortly, but if they have to scrap some of the taxes, you talk about e-levy, it should be one of the ones that should go or could go.
Per the design.
Exactly.
The design.
So aside e-levy, what else should go?
Well, okay, so let me put my answer in a context. In an economy where you are preaching tight fiscal policy and tight monetary policy, you do not want to advise the government to reduce taxes, but rather you have to do some realignment or substitution. And I've mentioned that you tax the areas that are doing well and then you remove the areas that are not doing well. And if you talk to GUTA or the AGI, they will tell you a number of lists of taxes that are hurting their production. So sit with GUTA, sit with AGI, and identify one or two taxes and remove them. Honorable mentioned the taxes on sanitary pads, and I completely disagree to that tax. They should remove it. They should remove it. The COVID-19 levy should be kept.
It should be kept.
It should be kept. The COVID-19 is not because there's virus. My understanding is that they might have contracted some loans. I remember the 1 billion IMF loan, interest-free. But because of the effect of the exchange rate, it's double now. It was 1 billion, it was 5 cities, now it's 12 cities. So if they haven't finished paying the loan, they should use it to pay. If they have, then they should rechannel it.
Into what
to
exactly?
Health.
To health, okay, which is why I'm coming to him. And
to health.
I need to wrap up with
COVID-19 levy is giving 2 billion cities, and it can do a lot for the National Health Insurance Scheme.
So that's what I want to ask finally. COVID-19 levy, should it go? And that'll be your final question, so I can wrap up with you.
Well, depending on what it's being used for.
Okay.
If it is used in the health sector, I have no problem. But as it stands now, it goes back to the consolidated fund, and we don't know what the COVID-19 levy is being used for. But Bella, before we go, he made some very important, analysis. But you see, if you have companies or industries and you keep piling up taxes, one of the major, problems of this country is unemployment. So if I have a company and I'm overburdened with taxes, the least I can do is to keep my company without even doing any expansion. But the more you expand, the more you even employ people, and the more you can, even if it's some basic tax, the more you can get more taxes. But unfortunately, the companies are suffering of so many taxes. So at the end of the day, they can't even expand to even take more people. And Bella, he was talking about the extractive industry. It is because we as a country, locally, we are not investing in the extractive industry. That is why we are not seeing the positive impact of the extractive industry. Because most of the money that we derive from the extractive is being repatriated. So we see them in our books. We are in middle income status, but we don't feel it in our pockets. Because how many of us are even, indigenous ones are even working in those companies? You understand? But let me give you an area like the agri sector. If somebody, and like myself, I'm a rice farmer, if somebody is a maize farmer or a rice farmer or a cocoa farmer, the money goes down directly to the person. So it trickles down into the ordinary person in this country. You recall, anytime there's cocoa money in the system, whether you're a cocoa farmer or you're not a cocoa farmer, the economy,
I agree.
You understand? So these are some of the areas. Why on earth should we be importing even a grain of rice into this country? Why on earth should we be importing maize into this country? You understand? And then this sloganeering, wasting money, go and plant food, and you'll be planting billboards. The solution for food sufficiency is to bring a container in the ministry and go and bring some cocoyams and plantain to come and sell at the ministry. for people in Kumasi and other places to come in and buy those foodstuff. If you have such a person as a minister, it's a solution to the economy, you have a problem.
All right. Well, Honorable Minta Kando, I'll let you leave at this point. I know you have a busy day as well, so thank you for joining us on the show. Honorable Kwabena Minta Kando is the MP for Dwaboso constituency and also a member of the Health Committee. And Dr. Sarkodie is still here with us. But Alfred Okanse will take on from this point. We're here until the Finance Minister reads his budget, and even after that, we'll still have conversations right here at the foyer of Parliament House and, of course, in the studio as well. Alfred has just joined us. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you very much. So you're taking over the mantle from this point?
Yes, but then again, I think that it's a very, very important conversation that we've been having since the beginning of the morning ahead of this all-important budget. We call it the final budget of President Ofori-Atta.
Yes.
And then also the first budget after this IMF program was approved. And we're looking at a number of things in there, which Dr. Sarkodie mentioned. The issue about e-levy. I think that we've been speaking to the business community. They've been very consistent about the removal of the e-levy, COVID-19 levy, and some other taxes which they described as nuisance taxes. And bearing in mind the fact that this administration was very consistent about that, removing some 17 taxes when they came in. And then also now we're seeing taxes rather being on the rise as well, which has led to the cost of doing business going high.
Exactly.
So even though we've seen inflation coming down, I think that's one of the things we need to find out, why there's been a consistent reduction in the inflation rate, but then no corresponding direct relevant impact on the prices of goods and services on the market. Because if we see the knock-on effect, at least by now we should have seen the knock-on effect on especially the cost of credit, for instance. Why is interest rate not going down as much? So these are questions that I'm sure the private sector will be finding out as to what has to be done to sustain at least the reduction in the inflation.
Well, I'll hand over to you now so you can take over. And of course, we'll be watching you from the sidelines. So please enjoy Dr. Sarkodie.
Bella, thank you. And Bella is going to be coming back as well. So stay with us here on TV3. And we're live from the foyer of Parliament. We've been having these all-important conversations ahead of the budget presentation, the 2024 budget presentation. And a number of the members of Parliament have been talking about the expectations ahead of the budget presentation. Dr. Sarkodie is an economist. He's a lecturer at the Economics Department, University of Ghana, Legon. And then also joining us now is Nelson Roxon Dafiamekpo. He's a member of Parliament for the South Dai constituency, and then also a member of the Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee of Parliament, and a number of other committees as well joining us. Thank you, gentlemen. Good morning. Since Dr. Sarkodie has been on for a while. So good morning to you, Nelson Roxon Dafiamekpo. Now, the point about the inflation going down, I'll start with you, Dr. Sarkodie, because just yesterday we saw the Ghana Fiscal Service announce a reduction of the inflation rate from 38 to 35.2. If you look at the trend analysis, there's been a continuous reduction in the inflation rate for the past 4 to 5 months. In fact, if you look at from the beginning of the year, well over 50%. Now we're talking about 35.2. But then again, there's not been a corresponding, at least direct impact on the rate at which the prices of food items, for instance, reduces. Not necessarily a reduction in the price, but the rate of the increase in the price of. So what exactly is happening? Where's the disconnect?
Well, so inflation is like driving a car, and it's the speed of the car. If you reduce the speed, the car is still going forward. It's just the speed that you have reduced. It's not reversing. So inflation rate going down, we should not expect a reduction in price. It's only showing us that the rate at which prices would have increased has been reduced. But this is just the average. First of all, why it is declining? Once it peaks, inflation peaks around 54%. So when it peaks, it means that the base is already big, and what is added on becomes smaller and smaller. We also know the contributory factors, the policy rates, the the monetization of our budget deficit. I think that the Bank of Ghana now has softened things for the government. The cost of production, exchange rates is a key determinant of cost of production because most of the inputs that we use for even local production are imported. So when the city stabilizes, we have seen some stability. I think the minister mentioned that it has depreciated by just 4.1%, which is okay. That stability is fine. It is also controlling imported inflation as a whole. But the figure, 35%, is just the average for the year.
Yeah.
There are some regions that may have higher or lower than the average. There are some commodities that may have higher or lower than the average. And there are some individuals, even the districts, and the Ghana Fiscal Service, they say they have a calculator on their website for you to calculate your personal inflation. So, for all you know, the weight in your basket may be full. Mine is full. To another person, it could be kinky. To another person, it could be cooking oil. To another person, it could be core credits. So depending on the items you consume more, it may impact on your personal inflation or not. So there are some items that if you go to the market now, their inflation, individual inflation, will be higher than 35. There are also some items that could be lower than 35. And there are some individuals whose inflation could be higher than 35, and those individuals whose inflation could be lower than 35. So these are the dynamics. So it depends on the items that you consume most. It depends on the items that you buy most. And it comes back to the point we have been making that we should rather focus on agric, because everybody consumes tomatoes, everybody consumes pepper, everybody consumes salt. So if you are able to, as a government, able to tame inflation, food inflation, then the question you are asking, everybody will enjoy. Because if I go to the market, tomato is cheaper for you, cheaper for Honorable, cheaper for me. Pepper is cheaper for everybody. So we must really concentrate on food, the food items, and make sure that as a country, food is bought at a relatively stable price, even if not lower price, but it's relatively stable, so that we can plan. One thing about inflation is that you can't plan with it when inflation is rising. You can't plan. But if you stabilize, if I know that for the next 3 months, tomato price will be maybe 1,000 per bag or something per box, you can plan with it. Our restaurant operators can plan with it. The white seller can plan with it, etc., etc. So really need to look at the food aspect, because the planting for food and jobs, that's phase 2. I want to see in this budget the measures that they are putting in place to actually make sure that food inflation is controlled. As for the other non-food, we know what happens. When the international crude oil price increases, there's little you can do. But at least for the food, you can, control it through storage. During bumper harvest, they get rotten. During lean season, then we are suffering. So the storage facilities must be there. Transportation costs, they should find a way to reduce, because there's a big gap between the farm gate price and then the market price. There's such a big gap.
Right.
By the time the item gets to the market, it's already priced item. And one thing, let me mention, one thing that we are doing to ourselves as Ghanaians, which is not good, is the profiteering. We should be measured in the way we want to make profit out of the little. Because of small, maybe exchange rate effect, somebody can price the item, maybe 20%, 30%. And I recommend the weighing of food items on a scale. It's done in other countries. So if you want to buy tomatoes or yam or cassava, it's weighed on a scale. At least that one can help us to control the profiteering activities of our market men and women. We should be measured in that.
And on that bit, so I recall that you made the point that what had happened, for instance, after the spillage of the Consombo and the Cone dams had a severe impact on farmers within that area. The Deputy Agric Minister has come out to say it is not going to have any impact on food security, but we see the food inflation in even food-growing areas higher than the national average. What exactly is going on, and what has to be done?
Now, thank you very much. You see, I've listened to Dr. carefully, and I'm happy he said that inflation is like a car, a speeding vehicle. Mm-hmm. You may reduce the speed from, say, 150 kilometers to 120 kilometers per hour. Mm-hmm. It doesn't mean the vehicle is not in motion. Yeah. It's exactly what's happening. Look, prices are going up. And I even doubt that the figures that the Statistical Service is putting out whether it's a figure that we can use to rely on for the rest of the year. Because the food price inflation, which is arguably what affects nearly everybody, is skyrocketing. So when the normal inflation is around 31%, like they're saying, but the food price inflation is above, is in the roof of the 40s, then we are in crisis. Like you said, the Deputy Minister for Agric, I am shocked he was able to say that irrespective of all the farmlands, groundnuts, cabbage, okra, tomatoes, maize, yam, potato, and all manner of food crops that are grown in the low-lying areas of the Volta Basin, abutting the lake. Some areas are as low-lying as 5 kilometers. The entire area, farmland, is underwater as we speak. And the Deputy Minister of Agri can say that 32 districts or constituencies whose farmlands, right from Ejura up to Esoja Mine, up to South Dine in Germany, up to Kweve, up to Kwando, up to Abutuase, up to Raura, up to Krachi, up to Kwanta, up to Dambai, up to Yeji. Persons in that area will not suffer food crisis and in fact affect the entire country. I am shocked. Perhaps he has no understanding of the symbiosis between the farmers who undertake their farming along the basin of the Volta Lake, vis-a-vis the fact that the Volta Basin is called the breadbasket of the country. So clearly we are going to have food crisis if we don't prepare. So my expectation will be that the government some time ago, as part of its policy, decided to build warehouses to store food, to build silos. You recall that? As part of planting for food and jobs. Government rolled out a whole program to building silos and to also building warehouses. What has happened to that? Government decided to build what we call dams to be able to enable farmers undertake to irrigate arable lands and cultivate. What has happened to that? Doctor mentioned that they are moving to phase 2. What exactly does the phase 2 entail when we have not done an effective assessment of the phase 1? Now, my expectation as somebody from the Volta region is that I expect to hear the finance minister speak and make some budgetary allocation for the flood victims, over 50,000 flood victims.
You want that captured in the budget?
Exactly.
The allocation.
That's my expectation. My expectation is that there will be a budgetary allocation for the Ketasi Defense Project, so that the nearly perennial tidal waves that affect our people in the coastal areas, especially in the Keta, Anglonga area, Way area, will be dealt with. My expectation further is that some abandoned roads in the Volta region, including the whole Tudenu road, including, for instance, the Adomi Bridge at Sikuma to Whole Trunk Road, and of course, my own Eastern Corridor Road will be completed. I also expect in the budget that there will be funding made available to complete the Todome to Germany 21.3 kilometers in South Dine. Again, my expectations are that there will be adequate budgetary allocation for schools and hospitals and clinics that have been affected by the Volta Lake flooding. And some of the districts and constituencies adjoining the lake will be reconstructed under some emergency program to deal with these matters. Finally, I expect the government to announce a whole policy program to resettling persons who have been affected by the spillage and the flooding. Because you see, VRA, one of the subsidiaries of VRA, which is the Volta Lake Trust Fund, has, as part of its mandate, to manage the resettlement communities. But they don't do that. And let me show you this. This is VRA's annual financial performance report, reviewed by the Committee on Employment, Social Welfare and State Enterprises. This report is yet to be taken. It's been laid in Parliament and may be taken tomorrow after today's presentation. If I refer you to page 7 of the report, and of course, page 7 of the report, paragraph 28. This is the observation of the committee. Increase in salaries of staff and directors allowance. This is VRA. It says that the committee observed that a significant increase in staff salaries and directors allowance, while staff salaries and related expenses increased from 316,634,000 in 2021 to 397,651,000 in 2022. Within the same period, do you know what VRA directors have done?
No.
They've increased directors' remuneration from 299,000 to 723,000. More than nearly times 3 of directors' fees and remunerations of VRA. And yet this is an entity that we say that is running itself into crisis. So my expectations today in respect of matters that have happened this year, in respect of this budget, is extremely high. And I'm very expectant that taxes on sanitary parts, for instance, will be lifted.
The taxes on sanitary parts
Will be lifted. That is my expectation. And my expectation is further that the government will not introduce new taxes. As we speak, government has brought tax exemptions, which is being considered by the Finance Committee. The total tax exemption brought by government within the past 3 months is over 5.5 billion. 5.5 billion. One of these tax exemptions for Central Oil Refinery is in excess of $165 million. So a private person's oil refinery. Why are we as a people granting them tax exemption in excess of millions and millions of dollars? If they refine the crude, it will not be a gift to the nation, we will be purchasing. We gifted over 100 acres of land to them in Tema for this project. How much more commitment and sacrifices must we make for a private person's enterprise to take off? I am worried.
right?
Yes, the tax exemption regime introduced by this government is increasingly becoming onerous on us as a people. If it because you see, if government says this new tax handles should give it about 11 billion for 2024 in terms of revenue, and you are granting tax exemption in excess of 5 billion, that is half of the revenue. So why do we do things like that to ourselves? So, my brother Okansi, we are expectant. Yes, we are expectant, and we hope that government will listen and reduce the tax handles and bring some succor and comfort to the people, because people are dying. And also some policy measures on the haircut.
On the haircut.
Yes.
Okay. Nelson Rossin Dafia-Mepo is Member of Parliament for the South Dike constituency. Really appreciate this, and the expectations indeed ties into a number of things that Dr. Edu Osu-Sarkodie has said as well in the business community. Thank you.
It's my pleasure.
Appreciate it. And you're still live here on TV3. We're live on 3FM 92.7. And then also live on TV3 Ghana on Facebook, DSTV channel 279, all across the world on freenews.com. We've been showing you live videos of what's happening in the chamber as members of parliament continue trickling one after the other, awaiting the arrival of the finance minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, who is going to fulfill the constitutional mandate of presenting the 2024 budget for and on behalf of President Akufo-Addo. This has been described as the last budget, the last full fiscal budget of this administration. Reason being that you do know, as per the constitutional requirement, that before the end of 2024, the finance minister will present the first quarter budget for 2025. But then again, that is just a transitional budget, so you cannot describe it as a full-blown budget for that matter. So this is technically the full-blown fiscal document, the final fiscal document of this administration. And the first budget after the IMF program was approved. So that is at least what we do know now and what is expected to play out in the coming hours or minutes, as the finance minister is expected to appear before Parliament. And a number of expectations, including the reduction and removal of certain tax elements, and then also issues related to the specific provisions for certain road projects and so on, and some others. And then also we have the assessment of the impact of this Planting for Food and Jobs Phase 1 and what's going to be happening in Phase 2 as well. And joining me here is the Honorable Haruna Idrisu, is a Member of Parliament for the Tamale South constituency, is a member of the House Committee, Environment, Science, Technology Committee, also a member of the Employment, Social Welfare and Enterprises Committee, is a member of the Committee of Selection as well. He has impacted parliaments, not just this 8th Parliament, with his leadership over the period. He's joining us. Honorable Idrisu, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity.
Great. Now, this is a crucial budget because of a number of factors, being the last budget of this administration and then also the first budget after the IMF document or this agreement was approved. Now, do you expect that the specific interventions to ensure that we break the political business cycle of always overspending the budget will be put in place, at least for this budget, this particular budget?
Why must it take us as a country that it takes IMF for us to be disciplined? We should be disciplined on our own. What has happened to our Physical Responsibility Act? We said that if you were excessive, you should be sanctioned. But the Minister for Finance came and suspended the operationalization of that particular legislation. That is wrong. Now this year is like I have no option. This is the last budget of Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. If you have taken 7 years to create a mess, do you use 1 year to clean the mess? Practically impossible.
You don't expect anything?
So this is a budget that is doomed to fail because debt sustainability is a crisis. We currently owe $59 billion US, which is over 78-88% of GDP. Growth has stunted over the years. The country is not growing with high interest rate. Inflation at 50% in 2022, 40% this year.
Well, now it's 35.2%.
One would have expected the Minister for Finance to use this budget to respond to the economic wins of the Ghanaian private sector. Cost of doing business, transaction cost of doing business, and then to respond to ordinary Ghanaians' quest for a better living standards, and to address the growing unemployment crisis of our country, and to offer young people some hope. What has happened to Ustant? What has happened to Obatampa? What's happened to all the bureaucracies that were created? Zango Development Fund, Middle Belt, Northern Belt, Savannah Belt, all of them under-resourced, underfunded to execute their mandate. Parliament itself is not doing enough in the exercise of oversight, in the matter of scrutiny of budget. Parliament itself is holding a calabash begging for more additional resources to prosecute their programs. Nowhere in the world will you bring budget to Parliament for 2 weeks, 15 November, and after 3-4 weeks, what kind of scrutiny are we going to do?
So the Parliament itself is not helping the situation?
I think so. But there's a budget bill that we have introduced. Maybe that would improve that. Now, does this budget respond to stimulating and spurring growth? Does this budget address the growing unemployment in the country? Does this budget address the cost of living crisis in the country? If that is so, then it's a hopeful budget. If it's not able to respond to these three issues, then call it an uninspiring and hopeful economic policy. Our debt is not sustainable. The minister is yet to reach agreement with external creditors on external debt treatment. He's done a successful domestic debt treatment of over 89 billion Ghana cedis. So it means that President Mahama and the NDC, should we inherit government in January 2025, will face an enormous fiscal space challenge. And they are deferring all the problems to the future because of their reckless, excessive borrowing, which has gotten us where we are. It is my wish and belief that the Parliament of Ghana must limit that no government should borrow above 70% of GDP. And it should be
So that's a parliament-led capping
it should be
the debts. That's the borrowing spree. You should cap it to 70%.
Of GDP at
But
all times.
why not 50%? Why not 50%?
No.
Why?
The country is still crying for road infrastructure, railway infrastructure, quality access to quality education and quality healthcare. So governments will spend. So you are not saying that don't spend, but spend in productive sectors of the economy.
For example,
Invest in agriculture. Do the Maputo declaration. Spend more than 10% of your GDP on agriculture.
so planting for food and jobs didn't do that for you?
It didn't do that. Reduce your import bill. Why are we paying $2 billion to import rice and sugar when we can cultivate rice? Prioritize that. We've granted tax exemptions to a number of companies. Have we gone to assess what has been their contribution to GDP and to employment? So for me, this budget is too little, too late to salvage and redeem a distressed economy, an economy in crisis that needs expanded revenue, that needs to cut expenditure in order to be able to do that. I don't see that happen.
Well, if government plans to spend more, then it must generate more revenue.
It cannot generate more. You see, you don't exaggerate your revenue handles. If you said e-levy was going to bring 6.9 billion, you are hovering between 500 to 900 million. That's exaggerated. Yet you decided to do away with road tolls. Bring it back. At least it
So
gave
you want these road tolls-
a certain minimum of revenue.
Okay.
And you are looking into the future of a partnership between the private sector and government to dualize your roads. Where in the world have you traveled that you haven't seen a road toll? Where in the world? I look forward to Accra Kumasi dualize, Accra Cape Coast dualize, Accra Ho dualize. To do so, you need somebody who will come and invest in 25 billion and say that, okay, I do the road, but I take my money over 20, 50-year period. You cannot do that if your road toll regime is in the current state of a mess of what happened. So I expect that public policy need, or public policy will respond to some need, like this sanitary pass. We expect that he should do away with that tax.
So
because
the
he
objective
necessarily
of
must
that
respond
tax
to
was to
the
cut
need.
down on the importation of...
It is not about that.
So has that been achieved?
Our women are not happy about it. The population and society are not happy about it. Why do you pursue policy? For the good of the people. The people say we are unhappy. So do away with it as a response to the need of the people. So I expect that to happen. I don't expect him to reduce taxes, but that is what he must be doing. But given the gap, the hole in which we are, he has to necessarily maintain a number of the tax handle and probably even increase or adjust VAT upwards.
You expect an increase in existing taxes and introduction of new ones, but that's going to be burdensome. That's what you've been talking about.
He needs revenue.
That the cost of doing business has gone up and so on.
He needs revenue to deal with interest payment. And we should be careful how much the country is spending on amortization and interest payment. The Minister for Finance has collateralized every good revenue source in Ghana. ESLAM, collateralized. Even Ghana Exim, collateralized. Energy bonds, collateralized. Cocoa beans, collateralized. So what do you have? State institutions are collapsing. Cocoa Board currently is doing a loss of 2.4 billion Ghana cedis. That is unacceptable. Cocoa Board must undertake necessary reforms and focus on their core business of cocoa pitches. They owe road contractors about 10 billion Ghana cedis. Is that their mandate? Is it a mandate of Cocoa Board to do roads? There's a Ministry of Roads and Highways. So what has happened to President Akufo-Addo's promise of a golden age of roads?
If road tolls are restored in this budget and e-levy is maintained, should the e-levy be taken off for road tolls to be brought back And if the two are maintained, what will be the position of the minority?
I have always said that e-levy was not properly thought through and was not properly implemented. They should have spoken to the regulator, the NCA, when you had a back-to-back cash in, cash out, 1%, 1%. We have only made one of the mobile network operators richer and not the government of Ghana. So I'm not supportive of it. We said at the time that it was going to affect. You see, we need to mainstream ICT in our national public life. Look at Agenda 111. Who did value for money? How much money has gone into it? You are constructing a cathedral. At what cost? How much should the taxpayer expect to spend on the construction of a cathedral, even if it's your moral good to God and to the church in the country? I just think that this budget must respond to some expenditure cut and then mobilize additional revenue. But we are not out of crisis yet.
We are not out of crisis yet. I thank you. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. The Tamale South Member of Parliament, the former minority leader of this parliament, Haruna Idrisu, there talking to us. He is also a member of the Committee of the House, Environment, Science, Technology Committee of Parliament. And then we also have a number of the also members of Parliament who are trooping in as we speak. And then also the specific analysis of exactly what the impact has been on this situation as we have it now. And then also we have we have the concerns of the private sector, and then also some other members of Parliament who have also made concerns known about the impact that especially the sanitary parts taxes is having on the women in this country. And according to Haruna Idrisu, the concerns of the people have to be taken into consideration in a decision to, as it were, abolish that particular tax handle. And then also he speaks about the taxes and what has to be done to ensure efficiency in spending and collection as well. I sought to find out whether this Fiscal Responsibility Act should be restored and then ensure that we have some level of value for money done for every form of tax handle and spending that we engage in. And that is something that members of Parliament are going to be looking out for. In fact, he questions Parliament's oversight role in this. And the Tamale Central Member of Parliament, Ibrahim Murtala Mohammed, is joining us for a conversation as we continue the live coverage of the budget presentation by the Finance Minister, the 2024 budget by the Finance Minister. Honorable Murtala Mohammed, it's good to have you. Good morning.
Good morning, my brother.
Parliament has been faulted for not even doing well in its oversight role. And this is by the Honorable Haruna Idrisu, that you can do better in ensuring some level of increased oversight, especially with the budget, and then also some scrutiny of the details of the budget. Because after today, you have 2 weeks, right, to do your debate, and you have the budget conference